Christmas in Salem is supposed to be about peace, but this week, it's about pressure. Because while the town is decorating trees and singing carols, the DiMera crypt turns into a live psychological experiment, where every prisoner has the same question: is Peter Blake a victim, or the architect of this nightmare? And as if that isn't explosive enough, Rachel gets a surprise visitor at Bayview, Xander delivers a gift with hidden meaning, and one festive kiss in the town square might light the fuse for the next war. So let's break down what's coming the week of December 22nd, because the holidays are about to expose what everyone's really made of. Let's begin where Days of Our Lives is operating at its most dangerous level, the DiMera crypt. Because the weekly promo makes one thing unmistakably clear: this situation is no longer stabilizing. It's evolving. The moment Peter Blake enters the crypt, the story shifts gears, not forward, but inward. Until now, the captives had a shared enemy, an unknown kidnapper. But Peter's arrival fractures that unity. Because Peter doesn't just become another hostage. He becomes a variable. And in a sealed underground chamber, variables are lethal. Already, Chad DiMera, Theo Carver, and Kristen DiMera have been circling Peter, questioning his timing, his story, his reactions. Not because they're paranoid, but because survival demands suspicion. And now, the promo teases the most dangerous development yet: EJ DiMera and Tony DiMera wake up. That changes the power structure instantly. Because EJ doesn't ask questions to understand people. He asks questions to corner them. Every pause, every hesitation, every contradiction becomes evidence, not of guilt necessarily, but of usefulness. Tony, meanwhile, operates on an even colder frequency. He listens for what's missing. What Peter won't say. What he deflects. What he explains too carefully. So once EJ and Tony turn their attention toward Peter, the crypt stops being a prison and becomes an interrogation chamber. This is where the show introduces its most dangerous idea: what if Peter isn't a hostage at all? That suspicion doesn't need proof to be destructive. It only needs belief. Because the moment the captives start seeing Peter as the mastermind, the kidnapper wins, regardless of whether it's true. Why? Because mistrust spreads faster than fear. Accusations escalate. Alliances fracture. Self-preservation overrides logic. And in a crypt with limited oxygen, limited patience, and decades of unresolved DiMera betrayal? Paranoia becomes a weapon. So this storyline is no longer asking, how do they escape? It's asking something far more dangerous: who loses control first? Who decides Peter is guilty before knowing the truth? And if someone makes a move against him, what happens if they're wrong? Because if Peter truly is a victim, then the real mastermind is still free, watching Salem unravel, and learning exactly how easily the DiMeras destroy themselves under pressure. Now here's the critical shift. Spoilers suggest the abduction nightmare is nearing its end, which means the physical danger is about to lift. But Days of Our Lives has never been about what happens during the trauma. It's about what trauma leaves behind. So yes, Chad is coming home. But he isn't returning to the man he was before the crypt. And more importantly, his children aren't the same either. Because while Chad was trapped underground, his family was living in uncertainty, and uncertainty is brutal, especially for a child. That's why the emotional center of the week lands squarely on Thomas DiMera. This ordeal doesn't just scare Thomas. It destabilizes him. For an adult, a kidnapping is a crisis. For a child, it feels like the rules of reality have stopped working. Parents are supposed to be permanent. They're supposed to come home. And when that promise breaks, even temporarily, something changes. The preview hints that Thomas will change his tune about his dad. And that line carries weight. Because it suggests Thomas has been holding onto emotions he didn't fully understand, fear that turned into anger, confusion that became distance, love tangled with resentment. But this week, Days is setting up a classic emotional reckoning, the realization that love is fragile. And once a child understands that, priorities shift. Suddenly, being right doesn't matter. Being angry doesn't matter. What matters is connection. So Chad's return isn't framed as a victory. It's framed as a second chance. A reset, not just for Chad as a father, but for Thomas as a son who now understands what he almost lost. And the show places this moment deliberately during Christmas. Because the holidays don't soften emotions. They amplify them. Joy feels bigger. Grief cuts deeper. And reunions hit harder. So when Chad walks back into his children's lives, the relief won't be loud. It will be quiet, heavy, and unforgettable. Because survival isn't the end of this story. It's the beginning of a family that now knows how close they came to losing everything. Now let's slow things down, because this is where Days of Our Lives becomes quietly devastating. The Horton tree trimming tradition isn't just a holiday ritual. It's a memory archive. Every ornament represents someone who mattered, someone who loved, someone who is still present, even when they're gone. So when Chad DiMera joins the Horton family gathering and reconnects with his children, the moment carries more weight than it appears on the surface. Especially when the spoilers reveal that Thomas DiMera leads everyone in singing Silent Night. That's not accidental. That's a statement. Because earlier this week, Thomas was a child living in fear, unsure if his father would ever come home. Now, he's standing at the center of the room, guiding others. That shift signals something powerful. Thomas isn't just surviving the trauma. He's processing it. This is Days showing us emotional growth without speeches or monologues. Just behavior. Just presence. But then comes the moment designed to break hearts. Chad helps Thomas and Charlotte DiMera hang Abigail DiMera's ornament on the tree. And that detail is devastating for a reason. Because Abigail isn't just a memory. She's still the emotional center of this family. Hanging that ornament does two things at once. It honors Abigail's lasting presence. And it reopens the pain of loss, right after the terror of nearly losing Chad too. So this isn't a sweet holiday moment. It's a reckoning. A reminder that grief doesn't disappear just because it's December. In fact, the holidays make grief louder. And Chad standing there, alive, reunited, but shaken, now understands something he didn't before. He didn't just almost die. He almost became another ornament. And if Days lets this scene breathe, it could become one of the most human, restrained, and emotionally honest moments of the entire week. Now the emotional circle widens. Because Lonnie Price Grant and Eli Grant return to Salem, and they don't come back for drama. They come back for support. Specifically, to stand beside Julie Williams, who is facing Christmas without Doug. And that absence matters. Doug wasn't just Julie's husband, he was stability, history, and warmth. And the holidays amplify that silence. This is where Days of Our Lives excels. Instead of turning grief into spectacle, the show allows it to sit quietly in the room. Julie doesn't need big breakdowns. She needs people who remember. And Lonnie and Eli provide that grounding presence, people who understand family, legacy, and loss. But there's another layer here, one that longtime viewers recognize. When legacy characters return during a calm, emotional stretch, it usually means the show is resetting the board. Salem is pulling its people closer together. And that's never accidental. Because Days doesn't reunite families unless something is coming that will test them again. So while these scenes may feel peaceful, even comforting, they're also the stillness before momentum shifts. Because in Salem, calm is never the destination. It's the pause before impact. Now we shift away from holiday lights and family gatherings, to Bayview. Where Christmas looks very different. Rachel Black is spending the holiday season inside a psychiatric facility. And yes, she gets a wonderful surprise. Marlena Evans comes to visit her. On the surface, it's warm, comforting, exactly what Rachel needs. But in Salem, visits are never just visits. Marlena isn't just family. She's reassurance. She's safety. She's the adult who shows up when the world feels unstable. So when Marlena goes out of her way to see Rachel at Bayview, it tells us something important. Rachel is still considered fragile. And fragility in Days of Our Lives is never a closed chapter. This visit may bring genuine comfort, but it also keeps the door open to future complications. Because Marlena doesn't just listen. She observes. She watches how Rachel reacts. What she avoids. What she doesn't say. And if Rachel brightens when Marlena arrives, that connection could become the first step toward real healing. But it also raises a quiet, unsettling question. What is Marlena noticing beneath the smiles? Because if she senses unresolved fear, confusion, or emotional instability, this storyline isn't winding down. It's preparing to evolve. And that's the reminder Days leaves us with. Even while Salem sings carols and trims trees, some of the most important battles are still happening behind locked doors. Now let's talk about one of the quietest, but most loaded, moments of the week. Xander Kyriakis arrives with a Christmas gift for Maggie. On the surface, it's simple. A peace offering, a polite gesture, a seasonal truce. But Days of Our Lives doesn't do simple with Xander. Because for Xander, a gift is never just generosity. A gift is communication. Spoilers tease that the present could be a new portrait of Victor Kyriakis, or possibly one that features Victor and Maggie together. And either choice carries emotional weight. If it's Victor alone, Xander is acknowledging legacy. He's recognizing the man whose shadow still dominates that family. It's Xander saying, I know who mattered. I respect where I come from. But if the portrait shows Victor with Maggie? That's even more strategic. That's Xander telling Maggie, I honor your love. I'm not trying to replace it. I want to exist alongside it. And that matters, because Maggie has always been the moral center of this family. Her approval isn't legal, it's emotional. So this moment becomes a test. Not of forgiveness, but of softening. Does Maggie allow herself to see Xander differently, even for a second? Because if she does, Xander gains something he's never fully had, a sense of belonging. But if she doesn't, if the gift is met with distance or restraint, that rejection doesn't just disappear. It settles. And for someone like Xander, unresolved rejection has a way of turning inward before it turns outward. Which brings us directly to the most deceptively dangerous moment of the week. Now we shift to the Salem town square, lit up with decorations, music, and holiday cheer. Sarah Horton and Brady Black share a festive kiss. And on paper, it's harmless, seasonal, a mistletoe moment people can laugh off. But here's the spoiler detail that changes everything. Xander sees it. And in soap storytelling, who witnesses a moment is often more important than the moment itself. Let's be clear and objective. A kiss does not automatically equal betrayal. Holiday affection can be explained. But Days of Our Lives isn't asking us to judge the kiss. It's asking us to understand how Xander experiences it. Because for Xander, that kiss isn't about romance. It's about exclusion. It's about standing on the outside, watching someone else step into a place he desperately wants to occupy. It's humiliation wrapped in tinsel. And spoilers warn us clearly. Xander's unresolved anger issues will lead to troubling news for Brady in the coming weeks. That line is doing heavy lifting. It tells us this isn't a one-episode reaction. This isn't a quick flare of jealousy. This is a slow burn. A man who just reached out for peace, wasn't fully accepted, and then watched another man take what he feels he's losing. That combination is volatile. So this week plants a very specific seed. Brady may become collateral damage in a conflict that isn't really about him at all. Because when Xander feels powerless, when he feels shut out emotionally, he doesn't always strike the person he's angry at. He strikes where it hurts. And that's what makes this storyline dangerous. This isn't ending with jealousy. It's escalating toward consequences. So make no mistake, the week of December 22 to 26 isn't a filler holiday stretch. It's a pressure week. The Demera crypt storyline is reaching its physical conclusion, but the suspicion surrounding Peter Blake may not end when the doors open. Chad comes home alive, but the emotional aftershocks reshape Thomas and redefine the family. Rachel gets a moment of warmth at Bayview, yet that storyline still feels fragile beneath the surface. And Xander? Xander extends an olive branch to Maggie, only to witness a moment that could push him toward his next breaking point. That's the pattern Days of Our Lives is setting up: peace offered, connection denied, emotion suppressed. And in Salem, suppressed emotions never stay buried. So now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Peter Blake is truly a hostage, or is he manipulating everyone from inside the crypt? And do you think Xander's jealousy will spiral into something Brady won't be able to walk away from? Drop your theories in the comments, like the video if you enjoyed this breakdown, and subscribe for more Days of Our Lives analysis. Because in Salem, Christmas doesn't bring peace, it brings the truth.